What if the monsters in the woods were once children? What if they were crying for help, not hunting for prey? This is their story, and it never truly ended. In the forests of Ohio, something watches from the shadows. Small figures with heads too large for their bodies. They've been waiting for 70 years. It all began here, an isolated facility hidden deep in the woods, a place where children entered but never left, where screams echoed through the night, unheard by the world outside. If you heard crying in these woods at night, would you investigate? Would you help? Or would you run? Ohio, 1952. The golden age of American prosperity. But beneath the surface, darker experiments were taking place. The government was pushing boundaries, testing limits, using those who had no voice. 15 miles from civilization, hidden by dense forest, stood a facility. Its official name was Sawmill Psychiatric Institute, but locals whispered another name. They called it the House of Shadows. Dr. Nathaniel Crow was its director, a brilliant neurosurgeon, a respected researcher, and a man with no conscience. He believed science justified any sacrifice, especially when the subjects were children nobody wanted. They came from orphanages across the state, children with no families, no one to ask questions, no one to miss them. The facility promised care and education. Instead, they became test subjects in experiments that defied all ethics. This was the dark side of post-war progress. Medical experiments without oversight. Institutionalized children used as guinea pigs. Society looked away. The government provided funding, and Dr. Crow had unlimited subjects. Locals suspected something was wrong. They heard screams at night, saw unmarked trucks arrive, noticed children who never left. But in those days, you didn't question government facilities. You kept silent, and you stayed away from the woods. It started with hydrocephalus research, a condition causing fluid buildup in the brain. Dr. Crow claimed he could cure it, but his methods were barbaric. Experimental drugs, unauthorized surgeries, procedures that caused more damage than they healed. Within weeks, the side effects appeared. The children's skulls began growing, expanding beyond normal size. Their heads became grotesquely enlarged. Some could barely hold them up, but Dr. Crow called it progress and continued the experiments. As months passed, the deformities worsened. Their heads grew massive. Their bodies remained child-sized. They could no longer attend lessons, could barely walk. They spent their days in the basement ward, hidden from visitors, forgotten by the world. The records tell the story. Patient files with clinical descriptions, skull circumference measurements growing larger each week, photographs documenting the progression, notes written in cold scientific language, describing children as specimens, not as human beings. Even the staff began avoiding the basement. The children's appearance was too disturbing, their constant crying too painful to hear. They were fed through slots indoors, examined only when necessary. They became the facility's darkest secret, living proof of experiments gone terribly wrong. At night, sounds echoed through the facility. Not screams anymore, something worse. Crying that didn't sound quite human. Whispers that shouldn't have been possible. The children were changing, becoming something else. Nurse Helen Bradley was making her night rounds. She heard something moving in the basement. Against protocol, she went down alone. What she saw made her quit the next day. She never spoke of it publicly, but her diary survived. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness. She descended slowly, each step creaking. She called out, asked if anyone needed help. The crying stopped, but she heard breathing, heavy, labored, coming from multiple directions. Then she saw them. Children with heads the size of beach balls, bodies small and frail, skin pale as death. They moved toward her, not threatening, not attacking, reaching out, pleading with their eyes, begging for help she couldn't give. She screamed, dropped her flashlight, ran back up the stairs. She locked the basement door, went straight to Dr. Crow's office, demanded answers. He smiled, told her they were making medical history, and threatened her job if she spoke to anyone. The ward became a prison. High windows too small to escape through, locked doors, no visitors. The children grew more desperate. They understood what had been done to them. They knew they'd been abandoned, and they began to plan. They began communicating in ways staff couldn't understand. Whispers that carried through walls, tapping codes on pipes. They were coordinating, planning, waiting for the right moment. Their deformed bodies housed minds that were still sharp, still human. Dr. Margaret Foster arrived as Dr. Crow's assistant. Young, idealistic, she believed in medical ethics. When she discovered the basement ward, she was horrified. She confronted Dr. Crow, threatened to report him. That was her first mistake. The records room caught fire that night. All documentation destroyed. Dr. Foster's body was found in the ruins. Accidental death, the report said. But the children heard her screams. They knew it was murder, and they knew they were next. 3 nights later, during a thunderstorm, the children made their move. Someone left the basement door unlocked. Perhaps sympathetic staff. Perhaps the children had learned to pick locks. Either way, they escaped into the night. 13 children, all deformed, all terrified. They ran into the forest. Their enlarged heads made them slow, made them stumble, but fear drove them forward. Dr. Crow sent staff after them, ordered them brought back. But the children vanished into the darkness, disappeared among the trees. They found 3 bodies the next morning. Small corpses, heads grotesquely large, found at the base of a ravine. The fall killed them. Their bodies couldn't handle the weight of their deformed skulls. Dr. Crow ordered them buried in unmarked graves. No investigation, no questions. But 10 children survived. They learned to hide during the day, to move at night. Their deformities made normal life impossible. Society would never accept them. They had no choice. The forest became their prison, their refuge, their home. Hikers began finding warnings carved into trees, messages scratched into bark with stones, simple words, "Help us, remember us, we were children." Signs that they still remembered their humanity, still hoped someone would care enough to find out the truth. A hunter named Tom Walsh saw them in 1967. He was tracking deer, heard crying, found a child with a head the size of a watermelon, crouched behind a log. When their eyes met, the child didn't attack, just cried harder and reached out, begging. He tried to help, approached slowly, spoke softly, but the child panicked, screamed. Others emerged from hiding. 5 more children, all deformed, all terrified of adult humans. They fled deeper into the forest. Walsh reported it. Authorities dismissed him, called him crazy, but he knew what he'd seen. Sightings increased through the 70s. Campers heard crying. Drivers saw figures crossing roads, always at night, always moving away from people. The children were still there, still surviving somehow, growing older but never growing up, forever trapped in their deformed bodies. In 1983, a researcher found records in county archives, brief mentions of the facility, lists of children admitted but never discharged, medical supply orders that made no sense, requests for specialized skull measurement equipment, evidence of experiments, evidence of cover-up, evidence buried but not destroyed. The facility itself still stands, abandoned since 1959. Windows broken, walls crumbling, but locals avoid it. They say on quiet nights you can still hear crying from the basement. Some claim to see small figures watching from the windows, figures with heads too large to be human. Sarah Mitchell, a paranormal investigator, decided to find the truth in 2024. She researched for months, interviewed witnesses, studied archived documents. Against all advice, she planned an expedition into the woods to find the Melon heads, to document their existence, to tell their story. She entered the forest alone. Day faded to dusk, then darkness. Her equipment captured everything: thermal camera showing heat signatures, audio recorder picking up sounds. She called out, said she wanted to help, that she knew their story, that people should know the truth. Her thermal camera detected movement, multiple heat signatures, human-sized, surrounding her position, moving closer. She tried to stay calm, kept recording. Then she heard it, crying, soft, childlike, coming from all directions. They'd found her, or she'd found them. She stood perfectly still, controlled her breathing, slowly turned in a circle, shining her flashlight into the trees. The crying grew louder, then stopped. Complete silence. She could hear her own heartbeat. Then a voice, weak, raspy, speaking words she'd never expected to hear. "Please don't run." Childlike but aged, damaged, formed wrong. She steadied herself, asked them to come closer, to let her see them, to trust her. Movement in the darkness, multiple figures emerging from shadows, step by step, coming into her flashlight's beam. They formed a circle around her, 8 of them, ages impossible to determine, bodies old, faces childlike, heads grotesquely enormous, some barely able to stand, supporting each other, all wearing remnants of clothing decades old, all with eyes that had seen too much suffering, all watching her, waiting. The largest one stepped forward. Its head was massive, scarred from decades of survival. It spoke in that damaged voice, said its name was Thomas, that it remembered the facility, remembered Dr. Crow, remembered being a normal child, before the experiments, before everything changed, before they became monsters. Others spoke: Mary, Peter, Elizabeth, names from another era, memories of parents, of birthdays, of normal lives stolen. They didn't attack her, didn't threaten. They just wanted someone to know, to remember, to tell the world they were human once, that they still were, somewhere beneath the deformities. Sarah's camera recorded it all: audio, video, thermal imaging, undeniable proof. They showed her scars from experiments, surgical marks on their skulls, identification numbers tattooed on their arms, evidence that couldn't be faked, couldn't be dismissed. They were telling the truth. They were victims, not monsters. They shared memories, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, parents who loved them, lives interrupted by false promises of treatment. They cried, 70 years of pain pouring out. They'd survived, hidden, endured, waiting for someone to finally listen, finally care, finally believe them. Sarah understood then. The legends were backwards. They weren't hunting people. They were hiding from them. Every sighting was them trying to survive. Every sound was them mourning what they'd lost. The real monsters weren't in the woods. They wore white coats, carried medical degrees, and were never held accountable. They told her what happened to Dr. Crow, how he died in 1959, how the facility closed suddenly. Official records said heart attack, but they knew differently. They'd been there, seen the fear in his eyes, when he realized his own experiments had turned against him, had trapped him in the basement, let him die alone, in the dark. Sarah made them a promise. She would tell their story, publish her evidence, make sure the world knew what happened, make sure Dr. Crow's name was remembered for what he truly was, a monster who created victims, then labeled them as threats to hide his own crimes. When dawn approached, they retreated. Back into the deep woods, back into hiding. They'd told their story, done what they could. Survival meant staying hidden, even now, even with proof. Society still saw them as monsters, still feared their appearance, still couldn't see the humans inside the deformities. The youngest one stopped, turned back, looked at Sarah one more time, its deformed face showing something impossible. A smile, grateful despite everything, despite 70 years of suffering, despite knowing it would die hidden. It mouthed 2 words, "Thank you," then vanished into the trees. Sarah stood alone in the clearing, dawn breaking around her, equipment still recording, proof in hand. She'd found the truth. But she understood something else too. Exposing this wouldn't bring justice, wouldn't undo 70 years of suffering, wouldn't give them back their stolen lives. Some horrors are too deep, too systemic, too protected, to ever be properly answered. Sarah's documentary was released in late 2024. It went viral. Millions watched the footage, saw the evidence, heard the voices of the Melon heads. Some believed. Others claimed it was an elaborate hoax. Government denied everything. The facility's records remain sealed, classified for national security reasons, they said. The Ohio Department of Health issued a statement, calling the documentary fiction, entertainment. They provided no counter-evidence, no records, no explanation for the archived documents Sarah had found. They simply denied and refused further comment. The cover-up continued, even after exposure. But the evidence exists. Sarah's footage, archived documents, witness testimony spanning decades. The facility still stands. The woods still hide their secrets. And on quiet nights, hikers still hear crying, still see figures with heads too large, still find messages carved in trees. Help us, remember us. We were children. Sightings continue. Just last month, a camper recorded strange sounds. Audio analysis confirmed multiple voices. Aged, damaged, speaking English, asking for help. The file was shared online, dismissed as fake, but those who listened closely heard something, heard the truth, heard children who never grew old, never escaped, never died. They're still there, in the deep woods of Ohio, Connecticut, maybe other states too, other facilities, other experiments, other children who never came home, living in shadows, crying for help, waiting for someone brave enough to look, to listen, to remember, to tell the world that monsters aren't born, they're created by the very people we trust to heal. If you want to hear more forgotten stories, more hidden truths, more legends that society tried to bury, subscribe now, because every like, every share, every comment helps these voices be heard. Don't let them be forgotten again.